Yo, YouTube, GK back here with probably the most unpopular series I've done, but we will continue onward. Two more chapters left in the Final Fantasy X novella. So we're on chapter 12. I'm not going to do much of a recap. I'm going to try to keep this one quick. So let's just get right into it. Chapter 12. Sloan and his troops flushed 4 murderers out. They slaughtered the first 3 but caught the last one to question him and took him to the east side of the island. On the beach, Sloan and about 20 of his subordinates were surrounding the prisoner buried in the sand up to his neck. "Kill me, let's get this over with," the enemy declared. Young, he was quivering. All the agents of the mage reacted the same way. When the murderer had understood only death was awaiting him, he refused to answer the questions and persisted in demanding to kill him. Sloan knew he would not squeeze anything out of this man. The guard could not leave his post without receiving the associated order. A long wait was promised. Since they had settled on the island, they had led their battle in a passive way. For Sloan, who had dedicated his saber to the goddess of war and had taken on the name of the god of vengeance, this situation was frustrating. Until now, he had suffered in silence while waiting for his brother to bind to his first Aeon core. But Anil was dead, and Sloan hated his younger, smooth talker, but indecisive, as strong as he loved him. When he had learned that Anil possessed the gift, he felt so proud. Now that he is not here anymore, who should I protect? The summoner at the head of Bavel had declared the Mage of Zanarkand, his daughter, and their supporters heretics, but it had not excommunicated them. Why? According to the rumors, Bavel needed the charisma of the 2 mages to win the war, and wanted to use them until the end. They had to lead Zanarkand to abandon the technological weapons, which would make the victory easier for Bavel. Sloan thought their reasoning was twisted. We could not spare those who were renouncing the gods. They had to be eliminated as quickly as possible. That was the goal of the elite unit stationed on this island, but the mages had understood the plan of their enemy and were sending to have it brainwashed murderers. Is my government manipulating me, doing the same to it? Sloan thought suddenly. Even the children knew that the gods were imaginary, yet anyone could picture them. This common illusion tightened the links, to the extent that the men were ready to give their life for it. Yes, this is brainwashing. Do we begin the questioning? Kaz spoke. He won't answer us, Sloan replied before reconsidering. Did you meet the sorceress? He asked. People say that she's of an incomparable beauty, is that right? The prisoner remained silent, his eyes lost in the distance. He gave a faint smile. You're nothing to her, you know that. She's just making use of you and your comrades before leaving you. Nobody will come to save you. For an instant, the prisoner raised his eyes to heaven. Will reinforcements come from the sky? Sloan was not seeing anything, but he knew that flying devices had joined the ranks of the combatants. This kind of weapon was going to turn the tide. He was sure of that. Kill me, the man repeated. I see. The tide is rising. Your head will soon remain under the waves. You won't be the first one to try and breathe underwater, but nobody managed to do it. Do you think you'll succeed where all others have failed? You're a monster. One of your comrades has killed my little brother, of course. You didn't do it yourself, but you could have. The problem, you see, is that you've come here to kill him, so you won't get off so lightly. You'll die, but slowly. You'll leave this world while cursing it and feeling pain. After that, do me a pleasure. Turn into a monster and come back to me. The next time, I'll tear you to pieces, then I'll throw them in fire. Sloan had not finished talking yet. The man burst out laughing. A soldier moved forward to silence him, but the captive had suddenly become silent again. He was staring at the sky. Everybody did the same. An unknown noise was approaching. A light whistling replied from the sand. This was the prisoner. A ship appeared to flying over the opposite coast of the island. Then he appeared at the top of the mountain, just above the Lucerina statue. This was the first time Sloan was seeing an aircraft. He discovered a triangular airship, very noisy and slow. Arriving above the beach, the machine turned itself on and started in the distance. Sloan and his comrades all moved away in haste in order to shelter under the vegetation. When the officer took to look behind him, he saw that part of the shell under the aircraft had opened. A battalion was already shining down a set of thick ropes. His weapon in hand, Sloan turned around and rushed towards the beach. On the back, on each enemy, he was making out a bag made of strings containing a bomb, like the one Baum had described. 15 to 20 infantrymen were rappelling down. The first one put a foot on the beach and, without taking a break, fired intensively on the bird captive. Sloane saw the head of the murderer tipping over. The prisoner had behaved bravely, like a great soldier. If they had fought in the same camp, they would have got along well, and yet he did not finish the sentence. His men were looking and waiting at him for an order. The last time I checked, a life was of better worth than that, he said with a bitter laugh. He immediately became serious. Return to the base, make a report to Baum, then place yourself under his orders. Cat will ensure the command of the group until there. Then Sloane pointed his saber in the direction of the enemy with a wild howl. After my death, let Baum take over the name of Sloane. After my death, let Baum take over the name of Sloane. Okay, he has always been more worthy of the name than me. Nobody returned to the base. The aircraft had spread enemies everywhere on the island. Exhausted, the young woman knew that she would meet her death very soon, but did not fear it. She has been waiting for this moment since the demise of the one who had counted on her so much, Canalina. Despite her gift of a summoner, she was killed 6 months earlier without having completed anything, and now that she was no more, what was there for the chances for Cat to have the honor to become an Aeon Core? Kush would choose Baum, and the guard would produce an impressive creature. Who would Infano have his heart set on? He was apparently in love with Kush, but the young woman rejected his advances. Anyway, Cat doubted that a summoner could become an Aeon Core. It would be a huge waste. In that case, there was still a place to take, yet even if Infano chose Cat, the young woman doubted that they could reach a genuine soul bond. She had heard say that Summoner and Aeon Core must have powerful mutual feelings in order for the ceremony to be fruitful. With Kalina, everything would have been easy, but with Infano, offering his life to the promised one was one thing. To sacrifice himself for a stranger only for the pride desire was much more difficult. How she was regretting Kalina's death. A set of close explosions pulled her from her thoughts. They are launching an attack, she thought. If the massive aircraft was full of soldiers, the guards had no chance of survival. Cat stood up straight. She would never be an Aeon Core, but she could still be the armed arm of vengeance. Oh, Sloane, give me the strength to lay our enemies low. To give herself courage, she remembered her happy days when Kalina was by her side. She snaked in and out of the trees until she reached a hilltop. From there, she could see the entrance of the base. Beside the dented gate number 3, Cat recognized the cadavers of Gecko and Romand. Her comrades were not dead in vain. They had dragged several enemies into the far plain. A familiar sword jutted out from the body of one of them, a beautifully young man. Cat held back a cry and hurried to gate number 0. She discovered a gaping breach, and the smell of blood assailed her immediately. At the same time, an object struck her back. She turned around. The foremost appeared to be wilderness, but a ball was rolling slowly towards her foot. She heard a click, and then the ball started to dilate. This was the last picture that Cat saw just before being thrust out by the scorching blast of air. Will I flower in the world beyond? Baum was searching for Kush. A few hours earlier, the stateroom was like the countryside hospital, but since the enemy had broken through their defense, it was more like a battlefield. The smell of death was unbearable. The souls were fluttering above the matched graves, on which they were spreading a pasty glow. An explosion resounded outside, and a voice shouted the name of Cat. Just after another one announced the death of a young woman, nobody had time to take care of wounded persons. Although the guards were an elite unit, their equipment was outdated. They could not stand up to Xanarkin's troops and to their constant technological progress. Despite everything, the time has come. We are more united than ever. He was going to become an Aeon Core. It was the only way to turn the situation around. The stairs which led to the living quarters were partially collapsed and scorched. Another bomb, Baum supposed. He stepped over the cadavers of the men he was responsible for and sent a prayer to God the far plain to take care of them. When he reached the stairs, he turned around in order to behold the room, ashamed of the relief he felt when he was certain that Kush's body was not amongst the cadavers. He started to climb the stairs again. 3 enemies burst into the living room. At the same moment, the gate number 1 delivered passage to the troubling or comical procession of the mechanical Bettles, wearing the 2 big suits and their gas mask. They went into the room slowly while swirling their chains. The enemy opened fire. Alib had demanded 3 more days to complete this project. After 3 years of research, Ron was wondering what 3 days could have changed. The old man apparently, suddenly behind the scenes in his creations, he appeared to be on his last legs. Baum, I'm leaving the workshop, sorry. The guard acquiesced brusquely. Come back here, Alib ordered the Bettles while handling a single. Signal? No, Vom said. They must fight. They would only get under your feet. A new explosion announced the arrival of other enemies. Alib and his bettles headed toward the emergency exit, and Vom started to climb again. Just before crossing the inner gate, he turned around one last time. The living room was presenting a macabre scene where they were merging the flowers of the altar, the blood of the cadavers, and the funeral light of the drifting souls. You're running away, coward. A young man, a saber in his hand, rushed towards Vom. He surely wanted to conserve his ammunition, which was going to make the battle more balanced. Vam went out down to meet him. Bring it on, son of a heretic, the guard spat out. He received the enemy with a large arc of his saber and felt weapon cutting into the side of his target as far as the navel. He made sure with a glimpse of the inflicted damage, then turned around and walked away toward gate number 0. The ripped open man toppled into the void. Vom hurried. It should not take a lot of time before the soul of his victim turned into a monster, he thought, just before hearing a death throes cry resonating at the floor below. Some mechanical battles were lying on the ground, covered with blood. Val thought of the workers who must remain in the workshop. He had never regarded the battles as human, but now he had pity on them. What happened next made him understand. He saw the mechanical battles gathering around their injured comrades and helping them to stand up straight. They are humans, he understood suddenly. Alib had never managed to create artificial combatants. He had made use of the battles to ensure his own escape. With a tightened jaw, Vam went downstairs slowly. Alib, he yelled. The old man had disappeared. Several false mechanical battles, disguised persons, not to lure the enemy but their allies, raised their eyes in direction of the guard. Say to Alib that he can run away whenever he wants. I'll find him and I'll make him pay for his treason. To a line in front of the enemy, mechanical soldiers would go fight in place of humans. Here is the utopia which had supported him until now. Despite the fact he was a soldier, he had dreamt of a world where he would not have to fight. None should ever discover this secret desire. Their hands moved apart as an apologized gesture. The Bedouins answered with their own disgusting language. Be quiet, Vom intimidated them, exasperated on how they were informally talking to him. The memory of Kush going back up from the workshop through the gate number 1 imposed on his mind. What could she do over there? There in the living quarters, Vom. Suddenly back to the present, he raised his eyes. One of the men had popped his head covered with blood around the inner gate number 0. The summoners, hurry. He continued before calling on the guard. Kush. The living quarters were similar to a labyrinth of corridors which led to the bedrooms. This was the most protected place on the base. How could the enemy have accessed it? Alib. According to Vom, only Alib could have led them as far as there. Blinded by rage, he headed towards his Kush bedroom. A long-haired enemy, probably a woman, was progressing towards the end of the quarters while leaning on the wall. She appeared to be injured. Vom slipped behind her, put the point of his saber to the neck of the enemy and pressed. He felt his spinal cord yielding to his sword. Then he trampled the cadaver and kicked her in the ribs. A very cruel act. He was completely aware of it. The battles were applying their influence on him. The wrath and the resentment of the slain were spreading along their souls. Protect me, Lucera, Vom exclaimed, was setting forth in the quarter at the double. At the height of the battle, only one who retained his composure could hope to survive, and he had to remind himself when he could meet Kush, he had to be Vom. The guard was admiring and loving. The quarters of the summoner were located in the core of the labyrinth. 10 doors opened into their corridor. Kush's one had the number 3. Arrived in front of the bedroom of a young woman, he froze. Since he had walked into Kush and Infano back there, the situation had deteriorated. May I talk to Vaus? She had asked. Later, my men are fighting. Really? Stop right now. This is not the time. Vom gritted his teeth and hit his head against the door. Any fortress could fall if his commander had his mind filled with a woman. No need for a traitor for that. Give me a chance to redeem myself. He hit the panel board on the door 3 times according to the agreed pace. The dial lighted up. On the other side of the partition, a bell must rang out, but nobody reacted to it. The enemy had not reached this place yet. However, the smell of death was already present. A metallic combination of gunpowder and blood with the sweet touch left by the souls. Kush. He hit the board again only 1 time. The door did not move. Nobody replied. Vom passed by the doors number 4 and 5 and stopped before number 6, Afano's bedroom. He knocked on the door and waited, and then a ball rolled toward his feet. A bomb. His first reflex was to send it back with a kick, but he feared that the impact would activate it. He jumped backwards and ran for his life. After the door number 10, the corridor formed an elbow to the right. Vom had barely time to turn and to pin against the wall. The racket of the explosion did not suffice to drown out the surprised scream of Infano. He had opened the door 1 second before the detonation. Vom swore and left his hideout. The enemy was standing on the other end of the corridor, close to the door number 1, and was progressing towards him. His saber in his hand, Vom rushed toward the enemy. When he passed by the door number 6, he shouted, "Close it." He was facing 3 combatants which were moving in single file. The corridor, narrow, was slowing down the progression of the invaders. The head man, a brown-haired teenager, fired a shot. Vom immediately dove in order to avoid the bullet, rolled and stood up straight. His run-up led the point of his saber against the throat of his opponent. He sliced it without hesitation. The second in line froze, and his comrades bumped into him. Both of them lost their balance. Vom squatted, took the weapon of the dead, and fired. The bullet got through its target and also hit the last enemy. The 2 combatants fell down. One there, he was standing this instant, the other several steps further. I can't imagine to close the door, it's broken. In a panic, Infano hurtled into the corridor. The scenery he discovered made him grimace. Evacuate. The summoner did not move. Where's Kush? Vom asked. She doesn't reply when I knock on her door. Infano stole a glance at his own bedroom, then awkwardly stroked his chin before inviting the guard to follow him. The room was square and not lovely. Its walls had been laid bare. The occupant of the room appeared to be less preoccupied by the decor than by his look. She's in the back. Be careful. To be honest, I need to talk to you before. Vom saw the 4-poster bed hidden with a screen and hurried to it. Kush. He moved the screen aside with a kick and discovered the young woman, half naked and asleep. Vom. Wait. Infano spoke. I only know this method. There exist other ones, but I have not been taught to use them. The guard turned round and sent his feet into the face of the summoner, who fell down on the ground. Then he caught hold of Kush's shoulders in order to shake her. She opened partway her eyes and smiled frailly. What happened to you? Vom asked. She did not answer. He tried to have her sit down and noticed her glassy look. What the? Kush. Vom, Infano shouted. The concerned one turned over and discovered that the enemy had gotten into the bedroom, an enemy he thought to have eliminated. The attacker brandished his saber above his head. Vom was unarmed, and if he parried the blow, there was a good chance that the sword hit Kush. He took this decision and bent his knees. He had the intention of bumping into the assailant, but not have the time to do it. He saw the head of the man toppling in blood geyser and rolling to the ground. The body hit Vom before falling down. In the frame of the door, a mechanical bedall rewound the rope he had just used, apparently proud of itself. Infano stood up straight and spoke to the bedall. He was talking in it the disgusting language of the creature. Then both of them skirted Vom in, shocked to get closer to Kush. They stood to the summoner and had her sit down on the bed. She appeared to be still spaced out. When the bedall slapped her, Vom wanted to go for the throat of the impudent one, but Infano grasped the waist of the guard and held him back with all his strength. After a second slap, Kush opened her eyes. The bedall took off its glasses and mask, revealing a hirsute head, vaguely familiar. He was part of those who always supported the palanquin of the young woman. He said something, and to Vom's utter astonishment couldn't answer him, but she did not do anything to cover her bare body, and he did not have a single glance for her paramour. I am the only one to not understand what is happening. He felt his strength leaving him, but a dark feeling, possessing his own train of thought, was starting to bubble up inside his heart. Oh, Sloane, who should I kill first? He tried to convince himself that the battle was ruining his mind. Without great success, finally Kush turned towards him. He read astonishment, then confusion on her face. She hastily wrapped her chest and smiled perfunctorily. And that's the end of chapter 12. Okay, I'm back to being confused. Okay, so let's work backwards here. So Infano did something to Kush. You know, he liked her, but he only knows of one way apparently, which I'm assuming is to make that Aeon core, and that must be some kind of sex. To imply that he has raped her and she's spaced out, right? Because they didn't plan on this attack yet, but they need this. He needs to be more powerful, and if she's not cooperating with that, I guess he took it into matter of his own hands. He was pissed about it. Next thing we gotta talk about, the Bedalls. Okay, so my initial theory with the Bedalls were, the ancestors to the Albed, which I still believe is true. The gas mask thing and the disgusting languages they call it, which is just so rude. But so they're actually alive. You know, they're real people. But it makes me wonder, is the Albed we see in the Final Fantasy games, are they part mechanical? I don't think so. I mean, it would be a very big stretch. I would believe over time, without being able to be technologically kept up with, that more and more human-like genetic features would keep going through. And that leads me to the triangular airship. Triangles are very big alien type of crafts. We even have managed to make a few that look like that. The TS-330 or whatever it is. So the and that's it. It just shows that there's a higher level of existence here, even more so than we thought of Xanarkand at the time. They have mechanical. They have robots basically that are human. So it transcends what we're capable of at the moment, even in our reality. The next thing we need to really talk about is the bomb things that they look like balls, but they're actually bombs. So that's a big deal with this whole story. I love the way this chapter is. It's just I got confused again as to whose side we're looking at. Are we looking? Because it said the Xanarkand Xanarkand was attacking. So it makes me think now that Valm and Kush are summoners for Bavel. But before we get to that, I'm actually confused. That's a big part to be confused on, unfortunately. Maybe something's lost in translation here, but it's the idea that one of the sides, I don't know if it's the Bavel side or the Xanarkand side. I want to say the Bavel side just because that's what I'm accustomed to thinking, right? They talk about brainwashing, that these people believe in these gods, right? Yet everyone knows they're not real. That's a very key part for me because maybe the faith aren't real, but over time, when you believe something, you make it real. So initially, they might not have existed that way, right? Because they don't talk about the gods aren't real, and the guy who's the faithful, and then you have the heretics. Now I don't know who's who at this moment because it's all gotten confused. We thought Kush and Valm, right? The summoner at the head of Bavel had declared the mage of Xanarkand, his daughter, and their supporters heretics. So Xanarkand had the mages or the assassin mages, I'm assuming, unless the assassin mages are what Bavel's response was to Xanarkand. But it would seem that everything is as it should be. Bavel, Xanarkand, and that had led to Xanarkand to abandon the technical weapons, which would make the victory easier for Bavel. See, that sentence is weird. Why would Xanarkand abandon the technological weapons, which would make the victory easier for Bavel? Like, why would they do that? So it made me think that Xanarkand did have technology, but then something with the Mage of Xanarkand, which is a huge character. I'm working on a very big video about everything I want to see in Final Fantasy X3, and that character, the Mage of Xanarkand, is definitely something I would want to see. His daughter and their supporters. Now, for some reason, I don't think the Mage of Xanarkand is Zion, Lord Zion, and his daughter Unaleska, right? Because that would mean that the war would have, started too late. I feel like the war would have started before Unaleska, or not Lord Zion. Zion was the husband to Unaleska. Unaleska's father, who we don't really hear about at all. Sorry, I misspoke there. That makes, it is possible that the Mage of Xanarkand is actually Unaleska's father, and that makes a lot of sense. But I would imagine that the war would have started with Bavel and Xanarkand before Unaleska would have been able to just, the complete annihilation. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. I'm sorry about that. I mean, I might be onto that the Mage of Xanarkand is just Unaleska's dad, and she summons the final Aeon. I guess that's where I had gotten confused previously. The final Aeon being something so strong it could defeat sin, but Sin wasn't around, right? Like, so if Sin came during the war, or let's say to the end of the war, and then Sin came and the war basically stopped, which we hear a little bit of that, not so much yet, but from what I know of the lore, Sin came in the middle of the war. It didn't, or it came at the end where the war stopped and both sides realized there was a new threat. Like with Vegnagun, Bavel had built Vegnagun in order to win the war, but Vegnagun was so poorly made and not be able to use, they had to seal it away because it'd be an indiscriminate killer. Even if it could kill Sin, it would kill people of Bavel as well, and they didn't want to do that. I don't know. The prisoner scene was dope. They buried him, and they tried to get answers from him. See, now I don't know who that prisoner was. Was that prisoner? Because I don't know where that beach is. Is the beach people? Is that Xanarkand? So I'm assuming, and I'm almost sure, I guess, that beach people are Xanarkand. So for my video, those are going to be, the Besaid bunker is Xanarkand, not Bavel. So a Bavel airship would make sense, because if they weren't used to seeing the airship, even though they have airships, Xanarkand has airships, or Bavel has airships. That was one of the things they said in there, like, I've heard our enemy has a few too, but that makes it sound like we're getting a story from Bavel's side. I don't know if it's switched at some point, because there was like, big point here. Sloane seems to be some kind of god, and they have a statue of this other person that, or Luceria, whoever that is. And also Sloane being some kind of lineage name of some kind of power. Just so much here to digest. I know I went on a little rambling there, but I'll end it there because I've already gone too long, and we have one more chapter left. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna read that one more chapter. I'm gonna post that video tomorrow, and then we're gonna recap it all on Wednesday. Hopefully by Thursday we get the why the bomb scene makes perfect sense with Titus, and then I'll have to see what's going on, because my Final Fantasy X2 playthrough I really want to finish. I don't really need to do a whole playthrough of Final Fantasy X again, but X2 has brought on a lot of things that have been proved useful for me in making a Final Fantasy X3 video, what I need to see. So stay tuned. I'm GK, and have a good day.